everybody. Welcome to another edition of Wiggle Wednesday, our second one for the month of October here. Today's is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go over my trip from Jamaica. I just got back a couple weeks ago from my volunteer experience in Jamaica with the Farmer to Farmer program. So we'll be going through, I mainly have a bunch of pictures so I can show you pictures from what I was doing there, traveling around the country and everything. But before we get into that, just a reminder, and I put it in the comment section beforehand today, 10 days away from the NC State 21st Annual Vermiculture Conference. So for those of you who are going to be attending in person, I can't wait to see you there. And for anyone else who may be interested, you can still get tickets to attend in person. Or if you're interested, you can get, this is the first year it's going to be available online, so you can purchase a ticket to attend online and check it out from wherever you are, so you don't have to travel there. And anyway, so yeah, if you want a link to that, you can go up. It's the very first comment. I put in several comments today just to help you all, or some links in the comments today to help you all with what I'm going to be discussing. But I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen here and we can go through the presentation. But first, let me get rid of these banners so I'm not dealing with that. And you guys can see fully. 1 second. All right, and let me get started sharing my screen here. I'm going to go with that. I don't know how to turn myself off on this, so you guys can just see me as I'm presenting here. But anyway, yeah, today's going to be October 12th live stream for the Wiggle Wednesday, and I'm going to be going through my Farmer to Farmer Jamaica experience. So first, I'll just tell you who brought me to Jamaica, how I ended up going there, and then my arrival in Kingston. We ended up going to the town of Brownstown, which is in the north of the country. After that, and then I taught in 4 different locations: Thatchwalk, Freehill, Troy, of all places, and then Landui. And then at the end, we can take question and answers about today's presentation or any type of worm or microbiology questions, soil microbiology questions you might have, or anything like that, compost, whatever. So for the Farmer to Farmer program, initially I had been contacted by Rhonda Sherman, who puts on the NC State Vermiculture Conference. She had been contacted by the USAID, and they were looking for someone to go to Jamaica. The Jamaican farmers had experienced financial issues with the skyrocketing costs of chemical fertilizers this year, just like everybody else around the world. And through these programs, they're trying to move towards more sustainable means of agriculture. So they were looking for someone who could present on transitioning to a more organic approach or more natural approach and moving away from using chemicals. So Rhonda had suggested me to the USAID and offered me up as a potential candidate, and then they ended up choosing me out of a handful of people who had been interested. So I got to go to Jamaica. So the USAID, for anyone who's never heard of it before, I put a link in the comments section. They're the world's premier international development agency. This is their website here, and they also quote themselves as the catalytic actor driving development results around the world. So it's a government program from the United States that has a government agency in the United States that has different programs that it works with. And through them, I went with the Partners of Americas, who's based out of Miami. And their tagline is that they connect U.S. volunteers with opportunities in developing nations. So they work with nations in the Caribbean, I believe West Africa, and maybe a couple other places. And through the Partners of America, they have a program called Farmer to Farmer. It was first authorized by the Congress in the 1985 Farm Bill. So it's sponsored by the U.S. Farm Bill. And then it's officially known as the John Ogonowski and Doug Baruder, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Farmer to Farmer program. So It honors Mr. Oganowski, who was a pilot on the American Airlines Flight 11 that crashed into the World Trade Center on September. You can bill back in 1985, so they named him after those two people. And then Food for the Poor is the local agency. They're the largest charity organization in Jamaica, and they assist the poor in 17 countries in the Caribbean and Latin America. So they're mainly focused on housing, food and agriculture, and fisheries. So there's a lot of fishing around Jamaica, obviously, because it's an island. Anyway, from here on out, it's going to be mainly pictures for the rest of the time, and I can just tell you what I was doing during my time there. So I flew up on September 11th. It was a Sunday. I landed in Kingston in the afternoon and then was just getting settled and trying to find some food. I didn't want to wander too far from the hotel and look for a local place. So I was looking for some jerk chicken and walked a few blocks from my motel and came upon this humongous statue of African-American previous slaves. So it's called Emancipation Park that I had wandered upon, and they've got this huge statue, and it's a really cool park that you can walk into with a jogging track. It had just been the Jamaican Independence Day in August, just a month before that. So they still had all these colors from Jamaica around the whole island, especially in different parks and locations like this. So there's a humongous yeah, so I spent a few hours at night just hanging out in the park and people watching and checking out the culture and eating my jerk chicken. And then the next day was my first official work day there. So that was starting on a Monday. I went and met with, I had taken a picture of the office door, but I don't know if I deleted it or what, for the Partners of America. I went and met with the main lady there. His name's Marsha Johnson. And then I met with Damar Wilson, who was my field officer. He's the guy who drove me around. He was a young 25-year-old man, super nice, super helpful to me. He was my guide or partner in crime around the island, and we would stay together when we went away to the motel and stuff. He would stay with me and then be there during the classes and drive me all around. So I met those two, and then in the afternoon we went to the place called RADA, which is also in Kingston. It's the Rural Agriculture Development Authority. So what's really great about these programs is that a lot of places in the United States that I've worked with are really in a silo where everybody's kind of doing their own thing and they don't do a lot of communication with each other. What I experienced in Jamaica was that the Food for the Poor works with RADA as well as the Partners of America. So Partners of America through Food for the Poor had reached out to RADA and said, hey, we've got this gentleman coming in. How can he be of assistance to the community that you work with and the farmers that you work with, so that they can bring people in from their agency and work with these farmers to help promote like the things that I taught and talked about, so that they can implement them and use them in the future. So I met with several individuals from RADA here at their local agency, along with a few members from Food for the Poor, and then Damar and I were there representing Partners of America. And then after our meeting with RADA, we took off for Brownstown, which is a 2.5 hour drive to the north of the island, where we were about 15 minutes from the northern shore. So in Brownstown, we stayed in a place called New Meditation Heights, which was up on a hill. And there you can see the cool colors of the motel. And this was our view from the motel. The ocean is off in the distance, and there's some in between there. You can see a big plot of land that's a big huge grassy field, which is one of the largest cattle farm in Jamaica. And then, so yeah, we arrived in Brownstown. The whole idea was that we would be staying there for a week and traveling off to other places through the day. And I would spend 2 days in multiple locations teaching groups of farmers who are used to doing chemical agriculture how to transition to a more biological approach. So there's our hotel. Here's our hotel at night. I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my whole screen here. I apologize. Let me go back and to the previous slide. So here's a big video. Right there in front of us is the town of Brownstown, and it's there and around the corner. We're kind of around the corner from the city. And then here's a cool night shot I took where it was either a full moon or close to a full moon. And here's the building. I was told that 90% of the buildings here are made of concrete, and they have a giant concrete plant in Kingston that supplies the entire island along with the entire Caribbean. So most of the houses that you see are made of concrete and brico block, and then painted really cool bright colors like this, or pinks, purples, oranges, yellows, all kinds of funky, cool Caribbean colors. And then I've got a few pictures throughout here of the foods I ate. So on the left-hand side, those are called guineps, G-U-I-N-E-P. It's a fruit that's about the size of a golf ball, and you remove the outer skin, and then there's a large seed pod that's surrounded with this fleshy fruit that you can suck off the seed pod, and it's really sweet. And then on the right-hand side there, we got that a few times for breakfast. That's a patty. It's similar to like an empanada or a savory meat pie. So it's filled with meat and cheese. And then this day I got what's called cocoa bread. That's like a little sandwich bread that you put that inside, and then it helps when all the stuff starts to fall off. You can soak it up with that. So that was a really good breakfast to have before our first day there. And then on the way to our class, the very first day, what was really cool about Jamaica, for anyone who's not been there or not been out into the countryside, is the whole countryside, if you get outside of the city, is filled with fruit trees, from avocado trees, mangoes. These they called apples. I don't know what another name for them are, that like they don't have traditional apples like the American apple or North American apple. These had a rather sweet flavor and flesh fruit similar to a pear. But we stopped right alongside the road because we saw all these fruit that were ripe, and just stopped and picked a few to eat on our way to the first class here. So it was like that all over the place, where you could basically just stop, and if something was ripe, a lot of the things were not ripe yet or just getting ripe. A lot of the mangoes, it was like maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the way into mango season, so they weren't ripe yet. And then my first class was in thatch walk. So we went way out in the country. Most of these places were way out in the country. That's what I was hoping my experience would be, where I was getting to see a lot of things that tourists don't normally get to see, and even typical Jamaicans don't get to see. The first building that I taught in here, you can see, is a pretty simple structure. It's got concrete walls. To get in the door, they had a door that shut, and then they had a board that they actually like device. It's got a simple metal roof with poles supporting it. Luckily, the second day here, we got Wi-Fi and electricity. The very first day, I did not have any, and I had to wing it all just without any electricity, which was fine. I'm used to. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So I had really wanted to get the money's worth. You know, people were spending their money to send me down to Jamaica, and I wanted to fill these people's heads with a lot of knowledge. And I'm used to people in the United States who really soak up all that nerdy knowledge of the soil biology and stuff. After 2 days here, I'd given presentations, mainly with some demonstrations on how to make compost extract, and then how to make this certain calcium extract. And I found out with some feedback after my second day at this thatch walk, that really they didn't want the theory and the background of it. They really just wanted practical knowledge that they could use and just hands-on stuff that they could put to use right away. So I totally revamped the night after this, I totally revamped my presentation and really edited things down, simplified things so that we had one day of some theory so that people could understand why soil biology works as opposed to chemicals, and learn about compost and compost extracts. And then the next day we had a completely hands-on day where we would gather materials and make a compost pile, and then have the ingredients and materials there for a compost extract, or we pretended we had compost and made an extract, and then we made a calcium extract that you can make from eggshells and vinegar. So let's see here. That was the thatch walk, my first class. After our class there, we visited a local farm that was right down the road. So this is Damar on the right-hand side there, speaking to Farmer Josh, who had led both of our first classes in a prayer and reading from the Bible, which was new to me. It's the first time I've ever had that happen, but we had it in a church the first and second day. So obviously, since we were in a church, they wanted to lead it with a spiritual reading. But anyway, here we're approaching his first field. You can see some peppers in the very foreground here, those orange things hanging on the plants. And let's see here, he's got bok choy is where like he's pointing to. And it's really cool. He's got a whole, I didn't post a picture on here, but he's got a whole irrigation setup where he's using drip tape on these large plots to irrigate his land. There's a whole field of peppers here. So here's his giant tanks for irrigation, and he's got a little shed here, open air shed that he processes things once he picks them. And you can see the pepper plants here just full of peppers. And those are all Scotch bonnets, which are the most popular pepper plant that they grow on the island, and they make a lot of hot sauce using the Scotch bonnets and use it for flavoring throughout different dishes. So after thatch walk, every day we would go back to Brownstown and stay in Brownstown at our hotel, and then our second set of classes was in Free Hill, which was also a trek away, but in the opposite direction. And it was a lot closer to the ocean. So this is the view from the outside of the church that we went into. This is a bit of a more expensive structure, not expensive, but compared to the first structure that you saw there, this one had really nice tile and stuff like that inside. But you can see the view from the outside of the church. You can see the ocean not too far off in the distance there. So there's several mountains between here and the ocean, but you can definitely see the ocean. So the second set of classes were in Free Hill at, I think it was the Free Hill Holy Temple Church. And this class, I was warned ahead of time that they may not be as cooperative. And it was my first class of trying out my simplified approach, but it went extremely well. I had a really good group. They were a fun group of people. So here's a video of me the second day where I'm showing how to make compost. We're putting together a compost pile as a team, and you'll see a gentleman named Philbert, who's a Rasta guy, who's putting on water onto the compost pile here.
So we're just going to keep putting very thin layers on the ground, thin layers of green, thin layers of brown, thin layers of green. Then I'm going to take the rest of what I got with the soil and sprinkle that all on there.
What was cool, and you can see him watering there, was these are people that are used to working with very little, and we didn't have a watering can, so he immediately grabbed a cola bottle and put some holes in it to put water in there and use that as a watering can. That's what he's using to water that compost pile that Philbert, the guy in the very foreground here, to get moisture into the compost pile. And then I was showing them what I'm sprinkling on there. What I was showing them is how I take a forest soil inoculant. So I go to a nearby wild area, which I did right out back of the church here, and grab some saprophytic fungi from the ground along with a little bit of soil up underneath there. So we've got native microorganisms that we're inoculating the compost pile here with. And then the next day on the left-hand side, that's our compost pile before we got going. Just me teaching outside there with the group. So we've got local farmers, along with representatives from Food for the Poor. There were 2 or 3 people there from Food for the Poor. And then the right-hand side there is just a small group picture with a few people that we took after the day there. And I'm super sweaty and hot. Let's see here. So this is a video I wanted to show you when we were getting out into the countryside. I wanted to kind of give a representation of what we were seeing. So we were basically not in any flat land except for the very last day that we were there, closer to Kingston. Most of the island is made up of this mountainous scenery and landscape. And so we were usually driving along a place on the road, on the mountainside. I'm sorry. The road was on the mountainside where they had blasted a little bit of area out, and you'll see the side of the road there that's vertical where they'd taken rock out, and see the beautiful views from different parts of Jamaica. And then if you'll look on the houses here, so you can see the concrete houses. And then as the video plays, you'll notice that they have black water tanks on top of their houses. Most everyone does their own rain collection. And I didn't get a good picture or include it on here, but most of these people would also have maybe like a pool out in front of their house made of concrete that was like a raised bed pool, not for swimming, but just a shallow place where their gutters emptied into. And they would collect that water for any type of cooking, drinking, showering, and everything like that. Anyway, here's the video of what it's like driving to the different locations that we were going to. Steep drop-offs with houses right off the side of the road. Yeah, so Damara was commenting on how there was a dog laying in the middle of the street, and there must not be that many people driving through there because he just didn't even move. He was like, whatever. The dog I'm referring to. I got to get things back on track here. That was my time in Free Hill. And so I spent 2 days in Thatchwalk, 2 days in Free Hill. And then the next, we had the weekend where we went to the beach one day in Ocho Rios. I didn't really include any beach video because you all have seen a beach before. It's not that much different than other beaches. It was nice because it was crystal clear water for the most part. And we were in a little bay, so it was nice and shallow throughout most of it. And then back on Monday, we were headed to the town of Troy, which is near what's called Cockpit Country. It's in the parish of Trelawney. This Cockpit Country is this huge area you can see on the map where there's like a lot less people living there because it's so steep and very mountainous, and lots of vegetation and jungle everywhere, or bush as they call it. So these plants that you see here are yams, and they're different from the yams that we know or we would think of in the United States. For those of you who are in the US, we think of yams that are similar to sweet potatoes or almost identical to sweet potatoes. These are humongous. They're like the size of, some of them are the size of a human head, or the size of limbs like arms and legs, where they chop it up into smaller pieces that are, hunks that are that big. And they grow them on vertical poles here to not only take advantage of sunlight and photosynthesis, so they're getting more vegetation up into the sunlight rather than growing it vertically where some of the vegetation might be shadowed. But there's also spikes on the vines here that can be really hard to deal with. So this makes it a little bit more work because they have to put the poles in, but it makes it a lot easier to harvest the yams because they're not having to deal with these thorns and spiky thorns that are on the vines. And then these poles are like 15, 20 feet tall. It depended on the farm. The ones that you're looking at here, though, are at least 15 or 20 feet tall. And we would see like a truck. A couple times there was a truck ahead of us on the road that was just full of these poles that people had cut in Trelawney, especially because they mainly grew yams all over here. And we would drive, and there would be like, mountains, and one whole hillside would just be yams. And I can't believe that just a few people would be harvesting all that. So this is kind of hard to tell. It's a picture from a video that I took. In the lower left, you can see the road where we're about to take a curve, but this is an extremely steep mountainside that's straight ahead, and you can't see any access roads around there, but you'll see those lines, and those are the vertical poles of yams that are grown in that patch. And so farmers are somehow traversing this land on that super steep cliff and without roads nearby and harvesting all this. So that's a whole lot of work. Most people had cars. We did see a few donkeys that people were using for traveling around with agricultural stuff. But man, that's just to think of, like I grew up in Iowa where everything's flat and it's easy to get in with a tractor, and to think of them having to work this land and approach that is just crazy to me. So in Troy, we got to the town, and I ended up teaching at Troy High School. So of course I had to grab a picture there. So the first day I was at Troy, I taught at a community center type thing, and I taught farmers. And then let's see, there were also some forestry people there, and they had wanted to include the school, but there had been a mess up in communication. So the second day I ended up presenting at the school, and I believe, yeah, this is a video of their lunchroom where I was presenting. It's a really cool dome with a open air top. So it lets light in, lets air in, and it's a really huge space. And so the next day, this space was filled with students. We had, 80 to 100 people in the room the next day, full of the older high school students that were focused on agriculture, along with the farmers and food for the poor and forestry service people. Oh, I meant to skip ahead the video. So here is our group photo. This is the group from Troy. The people from Food for the Poor, I believe, are in the blue shirts. And I'm not sure what the group in the purple shirts are, but those were mainly the local farmers. And then people there, a lot more people were wearing masks there than do in the United States. COVID was more of a concern with different people. So there's me in the very center, and then Damar with the hat on here, who was my field guide. And he's normally smiling. He just happened to not be smiling in this photo. So after Troy here, we went to a local farm. The Forest Service, a lady from the Forest Service who had been in my class, asked if I would be able to assemble a food dehydrator that they had. They didn't necessarily need me, but I was happy to do it. And while we were there, we walked and visited their agricultural plots here. So we checked out their corn. And in the background, you can see this large greenhouse. And one of the local agencies, I don't know if it was Food for the Poor or RADA or maybe another one, had provided the financing for this greenhouse because these farmers in this area have shown to be take initiative and be outgoing and proactive and really, doing a lot. So they showed that they were worth getting this greenhouse where they were currently producing pepper plants. So bell peppers, they refer to them as sweet peppers, but it would be what we call bell peppers. It was a really pretty day that day with overcast skies. And they had built, so this is at the very end of their greenhouse. I thought this was really cool. They built this huge pond structure where they piled up catchment pond for catching rain just from the sky. And then you can see here and in this next picture that they've got gutters coming off of their greenhouse here to capture all the rainwater that's coming off there and keeping that full. And then from here, this pond has a system that goes to a tank at the opposite end of here. It gravity feeds to the tank at the opposite end of the greenhouse. And then that tank has an irrigation system coming off of it that goes into the greenhouse and provides drip irrigation to the pepper plants that are in there. And then this is me and the lady from the Forest Service, and I can't think of her name all of a sudden. And then that's me putting together their food dehydrator. It was just a simple solar dehydrator. And then I ripped up a pepper to show them a Scotch bonnet pepper to show them how they could use it. And they were going to use that they were hoping to dry peppers. And she wanted to make a value added product that was a chili honey or a chili pepper honey, which sounded really good to me. And I'm hoping that they do that. So after this, let's see. Yes, the next class was in Landui. On the left-hand side, you can see me. We're doing a compost extract here. So this was also a very rural area. This was my last set of classes. We had come back to Kingston, and Landui is in the parish of St. Anne, which is in the southeast part of the island. Anyway, yeah, on the left-hand side, I'm making a compost extract. So again, I showed everyone how to make compost and told them how to manage it to promote biology. And then we went through how to make a compost extract so that they could have a liquid form of nutrients and biology to put out on plants and soils. And then last, we made a calcium extract where we would crush up eggshells. And on the right-hand picture here, you can see we're cooking it over a fire just to mainly suck the moisture out of those eggshells and crisp them up a bit to make it so you could make a smaller particle size by mashing it up even more. So we would put the eggshells over the fire, crush them up real well, and then put them in a jar. And you can add vinegar or apple cider vinegar, and the acid in the vinegar pulls out the calcium from that and makes a very strongly diluted calcium extract that you can then I didn't mean to say diluted, a very concentrated calcium extract that then you can dilute down into water at 1 to 500 or 1 to 1,000 parts. So I was showing them that, especially because most of the people around the island, most of the farmers are growing, among other things, peppers. And peppers are susceptible to blossom end rot. Both peppers and tomato plants are susceptible to blossom end rot, which if you proactively use calcium ahead of time, that can help to keep control of them developing the blossom end rot. So that's why I wanted to show them how to do that. So yeah, this is the last class in Landui. And throughout my time there, I got different fruits. So in Landui, on the left-hand side here, this is a pomegranate. Most of us are used to red pomegranates with red fruit. This was a green pomegranate. The skin on the outside was green, and then the flesh that you ate was a pinkish tone. And it was a little bit sweeter, along with that tart sour taste that pomegranates have. And then on the right-hand side here, that's called a sugar apple or a sweet sop. Some of you may have heard of a sour sop or may have heard of the sweet sop too. So there's a sour sop, there's a sweet sop, and this is the sweet sop or sugar apple. And all of these little nodes come off Can somebody comment? I don't know what happened to my internet there, but I'm back on now. Hey, Damar's here. I'm still. Looks like cool. It looks like I'm back online. Hopefully you guys didn't miss a video. I'm gonna go back to my presentation here. Apologize about that. I don't know what's going on with my internet today, but for some reason it just cut out. I normally don't have issues. But back to sharing my screen here. And let me get up to the video. One second. So this is up. We ended up on this ridge of this mountain after taking a crazy drive, which I tried to share the drive, and I don't think I shared that because it wouldn't load properly. But we ended up on the ridge of a mountain, and both sides were basically kind of a straight drop off on each side, which we couldn't see, but we knew was right there. So there's the video of the view that we had, which was just breathtaking. And this was on our way to Reggae Falls. Reggae Falls was not too far from here, and I wanted to check it out because it looked really cool. And Damar had been all over Jamaica, but had never been to Reggae Falls. So we ended up going to Reggae Falls, and I believe that's Damar right there in the lower right. And there was a Rasta dude and his son or friend there that were taking a bath when we arrived. But it's a big dam, which creates this huge waterfall. And I've got a video of it coming up here as well. This is from a bit farther away. And there was a guy swimming and fishing there too. He just jumped in. So yeah, that is called Reggae Falls. Let's see. We spent a little bit of time here just to check it out. It was way off in the country, so much so that we had to like ask for directions even once we got back to the country there, because there wasn't as many signs pointing out how to get there. But once we got there, it was really cool, and I'd love to be able to go back. And I'm trying to get forward in the presentation. So after my time teaching there, I had the weekend free before I had to leave on Sunday. I'm a huge Bob Marley fan. I'm a huge reggae fan, but especially Bob Marley. And they have a Bob Marley Museum in Kingston because that's where his house was. So at his old residence, they have a museum, and the property is turned into a bunch of murals and a place that you can come visit. So you can see a couple of the murals here at the entrance. I'm not going to share a bunch of photos because I don't want to bore you all with that. But right inside there, there's a really cool bronze statue of Bob Marley. And then this is a painting that was inside that I found incredible. I love the use of the colors there. And then underneath him here is the I3 from the different songs that they sang. But yeah, and then I tried to, through Damar's help, I tried to get as much traditional Jamaican food as I could. So I tried stewed pork, stewed beef, jerk chicken, fish, a thing called bun and cheese, which is spiced bread with processed cheese in a can. That's like a traditional thing that's a take on hot cross buns. And then this was one of my last breakfasts there that I had at the hotel. So it's ackee and saltfish. Ackee is a fruit, and saltfish is obviously a fish. And then callaloo is similar to like collard greens that we have in the United States. And then I had a fried dumpling and green bananas. Those are boiled green bananas, along with a giant piece of avocado, which in Jamaica they call pears rather than avocados. But yeah, all the food was really good. I really enjoyed it. And finally, that's me and Damar back at the office, bosom buddies from our travel together throughout the past 2 weeks. I had a lot of fun with Damar. We had a good time together. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, I think that's coming up to the end of it here. Does anybody have any questions about this or anything else? I'm going to check back to see if there's any questions. Somebody said, oh, they were asking about expanding to full screen. That my apologies for not doing that earlier. How bad are the soils as a result of using Western U.S. practices? So it's a lot different from the United States. They've got a lot of organic matter there. Let me stop sharing my screen here. Apologize. There's a lot more organic matter in the soils already. Hey, everybody. Hopefully you're still there. I had to turn my phone into a hotspot. I'm experiencing internet issues for some reason today, and it's I don't have any idea what's going on, so my apologies. Anyway, I was explaining that the soils there have a lot of organic matter, but I was noticing a lot of glyphosate usage, which I had talked to them about at Partners of America or Farmer to Farmer program to say, you know, hey, maybe this is something that you want to address in the future as ways of managing land where you're not having to use so much glyphosate, just because we know in the United States here of the health concerns with glyphosate. Anyway, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm getting a bit aggravated with this internet keeping going out. If I don't see any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast for today. Thanks everybody for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the pictures. If you want to see more, you can check out the social media for Urban Worm or Living Roots and see the posted pictures that I posted there. They're different from the ones that I shared today to see about my time there and check other things out. So anyway, yeah, join us next week. Next Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about, we'll be back to worms. I'm going to go over worm reproduction. So, you know, how long it takes for cocoons to hatch, and sexual maturity with worms and things like that. So join in next week, 11 o'clock, and we'll be talking about worm reproduction. Join us then. Thanks for joining in today. Thanks for hanging in there through the problems with my internet issues. So thank you and signing off.